From Disney, on March 21st, the musical movie event of the year arrives in theaters.
My name is Snow White.
Flawless. Exquisite.
Get tickets now.
Waiting on a wish.
Snow White will have you on your feet.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
And cheering for more.
I was thinking the same thing.
Experience the magical story.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all?
Snow White.
Disney's Snow White. Only in theaters March 21st. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Tickets on sale now.
Today at T-Mobile, I'm joined by a special co-anchor.
What up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Snoop Deal Double G.
Snoop, where can people go to find great deals?
Head to T-Mobile.com and get 4 iPhone 16s with Apple Intelligence on us, plus 4 lines for $25.
That's quite a deal, Snoop. And when you switch to T-Mobile, you can save versus the other big guys' comparable plans plus streaming.
Respect. We up out of here.
See how you can save on wireless and streaming versus the other big guys at T-Mobile.com/switch. Apple Intelligence requires iOS 18.1 or later.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check the Jumbotron first, before attempting to eat a stack of Supreme nachos in one bite. Now you're just a meme that everyone shares on game day. Checking first is smart, so check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Fresh kicks, spring tops, new dresses. There's always a score.
I mean, the denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to find can't-miss deals on all the spring things. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Hey there, Duke fans. Episode 703 of the DBR podcast. Jason Evans here with you. I know I sound a little different than usual. I am recording from a conference room inside of CNN, Warner Brothers. It's possible that they will come in at any moment and Mickey 17 me and get rid of me for doing a podcast for work. But I'm joined by my buddy Donald Wine. It is Monday afternoon. After a weekend where the Blue Devils clinched the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament, won the regular season title. Donald, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, Jason. You sound like you're in your underground lair, so you should have led with that.
Exactly. I am hiding out, right? We have a special guest with us here. You've heard him on this podcast several times over this year, Jordan Brenner. He does the Underdogs podcast on DraftKings, on the DraftKings network. He also writes for The Athletic. And right now, this is the moment to be talking to Jordan Brenner because he is the longtime author of the Bracket Breakers columns on The Athletic. Used to be at ESPN a while ago. Like the best place to go to find out about that team you've never heard of who suddenly winds up in the Sweet 16. Jordan Brenner, thanks for being with us, buddy.
Thanks. Evans, here's my question, right? You're at CNN, of all places, to be able to find a spare studio to record a podcast. Like, I thought you were higher up on the food chain there, man. What's going on?
Yeah. I can't exactly go borrowing CNN equipment to do my personal podcast. I'm sure you understand. Hey, Jordan, I want to start with this, and we're going to get into some of your bracket breaker thoughts and notions as we all prepare for the bracket to come out almost exactly a week from now. I want to start with this. We've had you on a few times, and each time we've spoken to you, you've talked about what this team can become. Here we are at the end of the season. The can become part kind of needs to be in the rearview mirror. There's not a lot more time left for can become. Have they reached your expectations? Where do you think they are relative to what you thought this club could be when we spoke to you, back in November?
I think they've exceeded them.
I love it. We're done.
Look, when we spoke last time, and we spoke in season. So by the second time I was on, I think I had a sense that maybe this team had a ceiling approaching where it is now, but certainly in the offseason, I mean, this is like the best case of best case scenarios. I mean, what you have is a historically dominant team by every metric you can look at. And I completely understand the point that the ACC is down, but that's accounted for in predictive analytics too. And when you see a team that second best team in KenPom history, that matters. Eye test. This team plays offense in a way. We're gonna go into blasphemy territory already. Okay. This team runs better offense than I've ever seen out of a Duke team, period. I mean, Coach K had many strengths, but a lot of his offense was, you've got great players, let them go play. This team has great players playing within a structure that includes more movement and ball movement than I've seen out of almost any Duke team ever. And they're almost as good defensively, too. We can talk a little bit about that if we get into concerns at some points, but this team is so connected at both ends of the floor. You have to appreciate and enjoy this and not let it now be defined by what may happen in a one and done tournament, because it's only setting yourself up for disappointment instead of just enjoying what's been a phenomenal ride.
Yeah, dude, but I mean, we're at the point where, as you say, historically great team, it'd be a little bit disappointing. Let me well, go ahead.
No, for sure, I get it. Look, any fan is going to be devastated if their team loses in the tournament. And it's the trick I've been trying to figure out with all of my teams for my whole life, right? But it's where you have to take a step back and be like, you know what? An Auburn fan is going to be devastated if and when they lose, but they certainly think this is their best team ever and they can win. And Florida's playing great basketball. And Houston, if they don't win, they're going to probably think, when are we ever going to, so you do have to realize there are other really good teams out there that are also trying to win, and it's a zero-sum game. The bottom line is, even if you think there are 6 great teams in the country, 5 of them are not, at minimum, are not going to win a national championship. So I get it. So if this team doesn't win a title, by all means, be disappointed, but don't point fingers. Does that make sense?
Oh, of course. Really quick, let me reflect on the Carolina game for a moment, because
let's talk.
This was the first real competitive contest that Duke had in a while since the Clemson game. And I don't want to discount the Clemson game, but Cooper Flagg was clearly sick, and the team didn't perform the way they usually perform. And I don't think you necessarily chalk it up to, they weren't as good as we thought or something like that. But against Carolina, this Duke team was losing in the second half. Carolina, for a good bit of this game, was performing on offense at a pretty high level, even though Duke's supposed to be this truly elite defense. Did you see anything in that contest that gave you cause for concern? Yes. I mean, in the end, Duke wins by 12. The advanced metrics said they should win by 9. So you can go, oh, hey, they were better than expected. I don't know that, Duke fans really came out of that game feeling like, yeah, we're better than expected in this game.
You know what? Let's break it down. First 25 minutes, next 15. Okay. So I think I told you
the last 15 are really good.
They are. So let's focus on the first 25 first, because then I've got plenty to say about the last 15 too. But I think I told you before the game, I really thought they could lose this game. It just felt like they were due. A bunch of reasons. You told me I was an idiot, blah, 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 blah. But what's interesting is
Jason and Jordan's private conversations coming out in the real world. I did. You said they were going to. I was like, no way.
I did not say they were going to lose. I said I had more concern that they were going to lose this game for a variety of
reasons.
You
also said you kind of wanted them to have a loss.
Not necessarily. I wanted them to be tested. Okay, so let's talk about what's interesting here is, if you had asked me to beforehand say, what would a Duke loss look like? The first thing I was going to say was, all right, it's going to be really poor 3-point shooting, right? Variance catches up to them for a game. They do take a lot of threes, and even though they've got 5 guys who are right around 40% 3-point shooters, which is absurd, in a 1-game sample, you can all go cold. And that still would be my biggest concern in a tournament game. That was not the case here. They shot well, even in those first 25 minutes. They really had trouble getting stops. And I do think the offense has improved so much over the course of the year the point where, they're just clicking on all cylinders now, that I don't think and Shire has alluded to this at a couple points, and the metrics I don't think they've been at their peak defensively in certain games. Some of that, and we'll get into, absence of Malik Brown contributes to that. But Illinois game, for instance, I was there. This sounds crazy to say because they won by 40. But in the first half, Illinois was running good offense. They were getting great looks. They could not hit a three-pointer, and some of that might have been by design, letting a bad three-point shooting team shoot a lot of threes. But the point is they were creating good looks. They've not been quite as stifling on defense. They don't force a lot of turnovers compared to certain teams. And, there were times early in the season where teams couldn't get a shot off. I've seen a little bit less of that until the last 15 minutes of the Carolina game. And then I felt a little better.
I think we all felt a little better.
Yeah. That's been my bigger concern, to be perfectly honest. So can this team play peak defense, and can they continue to shoot so well without one blip in a one and done tournament? That's where I'd be most concerned.
I want to go back to that in a little bit, but first, as we look ahead, kind of past the ACC tournament, I'm not overlooking the ACC tournament, but right now I want to focus on the NCAA tournament. Right now, other than Drake, who has gone through their conference tournament, Duke has the best record in the country. They're number one in all the metrics, all the computers, and as of 2 minutes ago, they're number one in the AP and the coaches poll. If they win the ACC tournament, should they be the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament, considering the fact that we're talking about comparing them to Auburn, who, of course, they beat in the regular season?
Can I answer your question with a question?
By the way, if I can really quick, it's worth noting, despite we talk about the predictive metrics, the things like KVI and the such, KBI, I mean, that look at reflecting on the season, like what you actually accomplished. Auburn's well ahead of Duke in all of those metrics. I know that, again, we look at the predictive stuff, and that's probably a better assessment of where you are going forward. But the reflective stuff, based on what your season was like, and also if you look at Auburn's, the number of quad one wins they have, it's just they are way ahead of Duke. So it's not unthinkable that you would go, oh, Auburn's still the overall number one. That said, Jordan, give us your answer.
Well, can I answer the question with another question first? What in this scenario has Auburn done in the SEC tournament?
They have won as well. So
if they've won,
all things are the same. Yeah.
And they've probably beaten maybe two of Alabama, Tennessee, Florida on the way, which means they've responded from the two straight losses. Resume-wise, they probably deserve the number one overall seed. I will also say that I think whoever gets the 1 or the 2, it's largely meaningless. One of those teams is getting Newark. The other's getting Atlanta. Not a big deal. Either way, in that scenario, Duke is getting the 4th best SEC team, as it's 2, whether they're the 1 or the 2. So I really see it's not meaningful to me, in other words. It's a nice feather in your cap, and you're separated from Auburn either way.
It's meaningful in that you want them in Newark because you're going to Newark, and I want them in Atlanta.
Well, there is that. There is where I have a press pass and that sort of thing. But yes. The head-to-head matters. I don't care the whole social media. We're better. No, we're better. No, we're better. Play it on the court. You know what? You're both really good. And it doesn't have to be a pissing contest over who's slightly more deserving than the other. They both had amazing seasons and whatever. I think they should be the top 2 seeds, regardless of what happens in either conference tournament. And then let's go from there.
I mean, to be fair, we did play it on the court and we beat them, but
at home.
That was at home, and that was earlier in the season. Yes.
Right.
But I see your point about Auburn. I mean, Auburn's had a strong season, and the fact that it doesn't really matter who's 1, who's 2, they're going to end up in the same spot most likely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Duke rotations as we enter, because we've essentially seen us go 9 to 10 deep all year long. But as Duke fans kind of know, at some point, there usually is a tightening of the strings and we get to 7, 8-man rotations. Do you think that's happening now we're in the postseason?
No. And I want to talk a lot about this because I look,
It's interesting because a couple months ago we kind of asked a similar question. You said, "Hey, there's going to be a point where the strings are going to be tightened up," and of course, injuries have kind of precluded that. But yeah, why do you think it's going to continue to be a 9-10?
Well, I'm not saying it's going to be a 9-10. It's been 8 for a while. What I'm saying is that the line I always use, and I've written it, I've said it on this podcast, is depth isn't how many guys you do play, it's how many you can play. And we've seen now 2 glaring examples of that. One was the reinsertion of Isaiah Evans against Auburn after he was basically not in the rotation to that point. 2 was Caleb Foster against Carolina. And we can get into that in a second, but I think, look, big games this team's going to play. Maybe Caleb Foster has bought himself a few minutes now. I don't know how that plays out going forward, but the bottom line is coaches are always going to play their best players as many minutes as they can. And it's very clear on this team, Cooper Flagg's going to play all the minutes he can. Con Knippel's going to play all the minutes he can. And Proctor and James are going to play a lot. And you're going to rotate at the 5. Okay, that's a given, right? All we're doing now in terms of the 5, Malik Brown's back healthy. Okay, so he's taking Gungba's minutes and then some, right? So you're really talking about, in big games, how much is Isaiah Evans going to play, how much is Mason Gillis going to play, and does Caleb Foster factor into that, okay? What I loved about, and make no mistake, it's been written about, Malik Brown changed the game, and then Caleb Foster helped change it even more. What I loved about the Caleb Foster move in particular was, and he was waiting to check in with 12 minutes left. They were down 6. Actually, by the time he checked in, I think they had tied it. But what I love was what Shire said after the game, and I wrote this down in his press. As we got into the game, I thought we were missing what he had. And I can't tell you how unusual that is for a coach. Again, this is not jump down K's throat day, but that's not a move Coach K generally would have made. He goes with his guys, and those are his guys. That's not a move a lot of Division I coaches make. They're very, very stubborn with who their rotations are and who's playing and when. To be able to look down the bench and say, you know what? Carolina's ball pressure is bothering us. They're getting into our guys. Tyrese is a little off right now. And we're having a little trouble keeping them in front of us and saying, we've got this guy who's got a little more burst, who can get into them on defense, can maybe handle the ball a little bit more effectively. Let's see what this does. Takes a lot of feel and a lot of trust. And kudos. We've talked forever about, like, dude, I can go back to the LSU game in 2006 where no one could hit a jump shot and Marty Potzus was sitting on the bench, right? Why not throw him in and see if he can hit a 3? The number of times, well, that happened in this game. This was the thing that fans always talk about, where let's see if someone can help us. And he did. So kudos to the program. Kudos to Caleb Foster for being ready and then not overdoing it. And in fact, like, doing the type of stuff you'd want to see him do to earn a bigger role in a team, which is be a glue guy, play with energy, that diving play to tip the ball to see on some of the just
play the game,
defensive intensity he played with, not over penetrating, not, playing within the scheme of things, was awesome. And kudos to John Shire for giving him that opportunity.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break, Jordan. On the other side, as I mentioned at the very top, giant killers, bracket busters. This is your specialty. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are. With all the new ways to get in on the last month of action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Boy, that's right, Duke fans. From Zion Williamson rocking the rim to Jason Tatum draining threes, or Tyus and Trey Jones dishing out those assists. Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings to keep things entertaining.
So take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DUKEBB. Yes, that's code DUKEBB for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
All right, we're back from the break, and even though we talking about giant killers and bracket busters, we are going to continue our conversation with Jordan Brenner of the Underdogs podcast and The Athletic and DraftKings and all the other stuff. We're going to continue talking to you about the Duke Blue Devils. Donald, go ahead and continue the conversation. I'm dying to hear Jordan talk about the two Dukes.
Yeah, well, before we get to the two Dukes, I think there's something that is kind of a novel question, one that we probably didn't think we'd have to ask you a month ago. But of course, we enter the postseason sans one coach. Jay Lucas, of course, departing after the UNC game to take over as the head ball coach at Miami. Just again, this is kind of a new thing. Don't think it's happened really much in the college basketball ranks. We've seen it a lot in college football, but do you think Jay leaving for Miami will affect things in any way? And how does Duke kind of reshuffle these responsibilities? I know I've seen Emmanuel Dildy kind of coaching the defense a little bit more this past couple of weeks. Is that just something where John's just going to go with the guys on the staff, or do you think he's going to call in some other people maybe outside of the program, the immediate bench to help out?
I think there's only one answer, and that is to, right before the tournament, announce new interim assistant coach Mike Krzyzewski.
No.
Could you imagine if they'd done that before the Carolina game? Like, we were searching for a replacement for Jay Lucas, and nobody was really available, and then we found this guy wandering around the building.
I would have. The amount of vitriol on both sides, even within the fan base, that would have happened if that was the case. Thankfully, coach is retired and has no
could have been the funniest thing ever. Anyway, they've got like 1 million guys on the staff. I'm sure they can handle. Like, is it ideal? No. Is it like a program killer? No. They've got a lot of coaches. Like, every year there's like another guy on the bench. I don't even know. There used to be rules about this stuff. I don't even know what they are anymore.
It's now up to, I think you're up to like 6 or 7, I want to say, on the bench, and it used to be 3, right? It used to be just the 3 assistant coaches. That was it. Now I think it's 5 or 6 with your player personnel guy, your basketball operations guy. So you can have like 7 or 8 guys.
Yeah. I mean, look, they'll figure it out. I mean, again, defensive coordinator Mike Krzyzewski, I'm just saying. Yeah. But no, I think they'll be fine.
The other thing, we were talking about the tournament, this might kind of go into some of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit. But when we think about Duke, and you mentioned that there's a couple of different ways that Duke can play. But is there a team out there or a couple of teams out there that you think in the NCAA tournament would present a bad matchup for Duke?
I haven't thought that far ahead, to be perfectly honest, about who's a particularly it would really require more thought. I think that, and we saw this a little from Carolina, a few physical, quick guards who can get into Duke's guards on defense and beat people off the dribble. I think that's probably the best way to attack them. I don't think you're beating them like necessarily 2 bigs, pound the ball inside. I think it's got to be something that's disruptive enough to take Duke out of its really well-flowing offense and the ability to, because you're going to have to create one-on-one with the way Duke plays defense. That would be sort of my bigger prescription. I'll look at this much more closely when the bracket comes out, but rather than any specific teams coming to mind, that's sort of the profile.
All right, Jordan, we mentioned this earlier, the concept that there are 2 different Duke teams. What on earth are you talking about, man?
Well, it's a little. Maybe I'm embellishing a little bit, but my sense is whoever's playing the 5, you can play two very different ways. Okay, with Malawach, you obviously he's a bigger guy. What's interesting about Malawach, and I'm going to give you guys crap for this because you mentioned it on a podcast earlier in the season. He is not explosive. He is not a good leaper. He in fact, where you can see this is he loses most jump balls before the game. He takes a while to elevate. He doesn't have a great second. He's just so long. So one of the things I'm actually concerned about for him in terms of NBA development is he hasn't been playing that long. How much lower body work can he do to sort of increase his explosiveness? But you saw that the Carolina matchup wasn't working well. The some teams he can switch well against. He wasn't switching as well defensively. Now, you can do a lot of different things. You can do drop coverage. You can blitz. You can position him in other sort of situations. But against a bigger team, a more physical team, more methodical team, he can be extremely valuable, especially with his rebounding at both ends. If you play Malik Brown at the 5, you're almost playing small ball without being small because he guards the perimeter like a guard, but can rebound like a big. He's not a great shot blocker, but he can protect the rim a little bit. And because of his passing, let alone now he's going to shoot threes. I mean, forget about it. But you have the ability to play big or small just based on who's playing the 5, which is a luxury team most teams just do not have.
I love it. And yeah, the prospect of Malik taking I wonder if while he was injured, he was taking a lot of threes. I don't know.
That's what they said. They said Shire said the one thing he was able to do a lot was shoot because it was the left shoulder. And I'm only saying this half jokingly. First of all, he's like the best 2.5 point scorer I can remember
in the history of basketball. Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like Dennis Rodman, although it's with and Rodman was a great defender, but it's more defense and deflections than it is rebounds. Rodman was specializing in rebounds, but yeah, Rodman never scored at all.
The second thing is, I think it's to Duke's advantage when you run pick and roll with him in the game because I think he guards the ball on guards better than some of Duke's guards do. So,
dude, I said this in the recap. I was like, I don't know why Carolina, like their reflex was RJ Davis has the ball. Let's run a pick and roll so that we'll get RJ flipped onto the center. And I was like, Duke was like, yeah, please. This is what we want.
Well, and it completely took away his step back, which is right because Malik can give space and still recover with his length. So I thought that was terrible coaching by Hubert Davis in that sense. But the other thing with Brown is where was I going with this? Switching. I don't know. He's just really good. The bottom line is he's really freaking good, and it really does change the way you play defense when he's in the game.
Well, you were talking a little bit about earlier. You briefly mentioned the passing. I mean, you noticed when Malik was injured that Duke just did not run as many back cuts. They didn't get as many. Malik Brown. When we run our offense and Kamen Malawach gets the ball on the perimeter, a handoff is coming. When Malik Brown gets on the perimeter, you're like, if you're the defense, you're like, oh shit, who's cutting to the basket? The pass that he made to Con Knipple in the game against Carolina, that's an absurd. That pass has no business. And by the way, I went back and looked. I sort of wondered who was covering Con. It was Seth Trimble. It's literally North Carolina's best defender. And
by the way, it was a great cut too. I watched that play over and over.
Oh, absolutely. But it's still an absurd pass.
Con does so well. But I remember what I was going to say, which is this. My biggest concern with Malik is re-injury. And I said this to you half jokingly over text that I would consider putting him in bubble wrap and only using him when you can beat whomever you're going to play in the ACC quarterfinals with Patrick Gungba playing and Malik resting. And you could probably beat whoever you're playing in the semifinal. It's almost all right, emergency, bring in Malik. But otherwise, having dislocated my shoulder twice playing basketball, I'm afraid for him. And I would hate to see him re-injure himself in a game where he's not needed because he is such an X factor in those highest echelon games against the best teams and increases his team's ceiling dramatically that he just needs to be there.
Yeah. I mean, folks, you remember against Auburn. I mean, everyone talks obviously for good reason about Isaiah Evans, but Malik Brown made Janai Brooms have a really difficult day.
And we should talk about Evans really quick too, which is that, he didn't play in the second half of the game. Again, it shows a fluidity to Shire's rotations. And I think you saw, that as phenomenal as he's been as a shooter this year and as exciting a player and as much upside as he has, there's still matchups that are really hard for him. You could see the physicality and speed of that game from the second he came in was not a great fit. So kudos to Shire for adjusting to Caleb Foster there. And again, back to my point about depth. Different guys are maybe more useful in certain matchups. There are games where Mason Gillis is more useful. There are games where Evans is more useful. There are games where Caleb Foster is more useful. So outside of your starting five and Malik Brown, you can be fluid with those other dudes.
All right, last question.
Yeah.
We're finally going to get to something I mentioned earlier. The concept of giant killers, bracket busters. This has been your specialty. You said 20 years, I think is the number. Talk to us a little bit about, what you're looking for and maybe a couple of the teams that you think are really interesting ones to look at in the bracket. Admittedly, we don't know who's in the bracket and where teams are matched up yet. And when the time comes, we'll probably have you back on to discuss that.
Do you want the backstory on how this became my specialty in the first place? Because it's sort of ridiculous. So,
with that tease, am I going to say no?
Well, so I was at ESPN the magazine. It was 2006. Okay. And I forget whether I hadn't even been hired as the NBA editor yet. I was still technically freelancing, writing, and helping out editing and other stuff. And this one editor in the office comes to me and goes, "Hey, Brenner, figure out how to pick which teams are going to have upsets in the tournament." And I'm like, "Yeah, because if I could do that, I'd be here and not in Vegas." Like, are you? There's a reason they're called upsets, right? So, I am not a math guy, but I'm numerate. In other words, I can't run regression analysis myself, but I understand it. I've always sort of been good at sort of taking analytics before it became a big thing and translating it into sort of an understandable thing. That was sort of my niche at ESPN. So I ran what now is a laughable sort of math study of teams that had come up with upsets that we defined as had to be a 5 seed difference or greater. Okay. And I just looked for patterns, right, among those teams. Well, I kind of half-ass stumbled into George Mason as one of my 5 favorite underdogs in that 2006 tournament. Well, as you remember, and so we wrote a piece about the most likely teams, and of course that was the year they made the Final Four. So that bought what was known as Giant Killers a lot of equity and became a thing on the show. We used to you even had our own special on the network with, it was me and my partner Peter Keating and then Shane Battier and Seth Greenberg. When we left ESPN, we took it to The Athletic. Now we have a team of math professors from Furman doing the back end. Peter and I get to write. It's a whole they do like network analysis and all sorts of crazy math that I don't understand. But the bottom line is there are trends among both the types of teams that pull off upsets in the NCAA tournament and the types of teams that are more vulnerable. The basic way you want to look at it is teams that expand their range of outcomes through high risk, high reward strategies have a better chance of pulling off upsets in the tournament, which makes perfect sense, right?
You're talking about 3-point shooting there, right?
Well, ish. That's one of them. But if you were playing one-on-one against Steph Curry, would you want to play to 11 or 1? Right?
I'd rather play to 1 for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So slow tempo, fewer possessions. The fewer possessions in a game, the fewer times you have to beat the more talented foe. Then it comes down to extra possessions within the low possession game. So 3s are worth more than 2. So teams that take a lot of 3s increase their variance. You don't care if you lose by 30 or 1 in the tournament. You lose. So you want whatever gives you the extra 5% chances of actually winning the game. That's what you want to do. And then the 2 big possession building exercises are turnovers and rebounds. So offensive rebounding, huge, statistically significant for both giants and killers. We'll get into the safe giants in a second. Turnovers, again, especially forcing turnovers, but also limiting them on offense, a big deal. The offensive rebounding I want to point out for the Giants too. The safest Giants tend to be really good offensive rebounding teams. And I'll ask you guys, why do you think that is?
Well, because if you miss a shot, having a chance to get another chance at it is probably great. And especially because the Giants tend to be teams that are already a little bit bigger from the power conferences, and your odds of dominating the boards are much greater when you're facing what's probably a smaller team from a mid-major or a minor conference.
Well, you got it really on the first part, right? you need a weapon to survive a cold shooting night. Because we've seen a lot of teams, that's it. You go 3 for 23 from 3, you're done. Well, how do you mitigate against that? You get the ball back and you put it back up. So it's like offensive rebounding is the great sort of like safety for big teams to protect against a bad shooting night. It was the 2010 Duke team. It was their secret weapon, right? Mm-hmm. So which teams best exemplify let's talk about the killers this year. Start with Drake, who won. They were our favorite killer to begin with. They won the Missouri Valley yesterday. I mean, they do it all. They are analytically beautifully built, especially to be a killer. Forced turnovers on 22% of possessions. That's 12th in the country. Offensive rebounds on 36% of possessions. That's 18th. Defensive rebound. They defensive rebound at the 24th best rate. They play at the slowest pace in the country. And they don't maybe shoot as many threes as you'd like out of a killer, but they hit a pretty good percentage. So if they have to dial up the frequency, they can. Couple other teams to keep an eye on. One is UCSD. No, not San Diego State, and not the University of San Diego. No, we're talking about University of California at San Diego, the Tritons. They, again, really, really interesting team. They've only been in Division I, I think, for 4 years. They were on probation, but they've got all sorts of, again, killer tactics at there. And then a couple others to keep your eye on. Utah State is an interesting team. And VCU, not the same shock of VCU. This is the Ryan Odom version, but they still force a lot of turnovers. They just do it differently. So a couple teams to watch out for in your bracket.
I believe Ryan Odom is he the son of Dave Odom, who used to coach at Forest back in the day?
Yep. And McNeese with Will Wade, who I know is being talked about in the NC State job. McNeese is another high variance team. We liked them last year. They lost by 20 to Gonzaga. So that's where I talk about the double-edged sword of playing high risk, high reward. But our model likes them even better this year. So keep an eye on them as well.
All right. I've been writing all this down, man. This is good stuff.
Well,
you got to get those extra 2 points.
It'll all be written down. It'll all be written down for you at The Athletic, and you can tune into. We have special episodes of our Underdog show, including a Selection Monday hour-long special on the network. You should definitely check it out.
Look at you pumping your other stuff.
Look at that! I'm pumping my phone calls with you and my show. What a day!
Exactly.
Donald, right. we gotta like message or something.
Exactly.
Pump that up to you.
Yeah.
With that, we're going to wrap it up here with Jordan Brenner of The Athletic and the Underdogs podcast on the DraftKings Network. Dude, it is always a pleasure. And yeah, folks, in case you can't tell, Jordan and I do a good bit of talking when we're not on this podcast.
I think, Jason, we should have him back on, like, I don't know, the second week of April, because that's probably hopefully the next time that we will have available for him to come on.
I certainly hope everyone is busy between now and then. And again, enjoy the ride. You're not going to get to see a lot of teams like in whatever sport you root for. A lot of teams that play as high a level and are as entertaining as this team. So enjoy it.
I could not say it any better than that. Thanks a lot, Jordan. He's Donald. I'm Jason. This is the Duke Band playing us out and taking us home. Hey, we're going to have a preview of the ACC tournament coming to you in about 24, 48 hours, something like that, once we know who the heck Duke will be playing. And I will be in Charlotte. Until then, Duke Band, take us home.